Hello there. How have you been? Hi, everyone. For those new to the channel, I'm Dr. Charles, and today I'd like to talk to you about an issue that may not be readily visible on the surface, but I promise you affects many aspects of our everyday social interactions and potentially our mental health, and that is the intersection between interpersonal boundaries and fascism. Now, to clarify, when I refer to fascism, I'm talking about a mindset characterized by authoritarianism, intolerance, and the suppression of dissenting voices. A form of thinking that can seep into our everyday lives through aggressive rhetoric, coercive societal norms, or even workplace dynamics where power is abused. For example, you might notice someone in a meeting dismissing alternative viewpoints with an us versus them mindset, where only one single opinion is enforced as the only acceptable truth, and by simply voicing other viewpoints, it is taken as offense. You could also encounter this in social media comment sections, where any criticism is met with hostility, in community groups where dissent is labeled as disloyal, or even in educational settings where rigid hierarchies stifle open discussion. These are subtle yet impactful ways of fascistic behavior that can erode autonomy and safety. Now, to begin addressing these challenges, it's important to understand that boundaries are not just physical or emotional barriers, but also protective measures that maintain our integrity and what we psychologists call a sense of self. Your sense of self is the understanding and awareness of who you are. That includes your values, that includes your beliefs, your emotions, and your personal identity, which shapes how you interact with the world and make decisions. Sense of self is an internal framework that shapes how we perceive these things and guides our understanding of who we are. So, in other words, think of it like your very own compass. Without it, how do you know where you're heading? When we encounter fascistic attitudes, these boundaries help us to separate our own values from harmful, overbearing ideologies, the pressure to conform. It begins with recognizing that the problem isn't merely about political or social debate. It's about respecting the dignity of each person and their own compasses during our interactions. Now, let's consider some strategies for establishing these boundaries. The first step is self-awareness. Paying attention to your own feelings and physical sensations when you're interacting with someone whose approach feels coercive or demeaning in particular. This mindfulness practice can help you to remain observant of your emotions, and if you are noticing feelings of tension, anger, or overwhelming sadness, these signals are clues that your boundaries might be at risk and you are therefore at risk of losing your way. Now, let's consider a cognitive behavioral technique, challenging intrusive thoughts as the next helpful step. Let's say that your thoughts might tell you, if you're a people pleaser like I am, that I just need to accept this behavior, or this is the new normal. Instead, try reframing your internal dialogue to affirm your right to healthy, respectful interactions. For instance, it might also be helpful instead to remind yourself that it is perfectly acceptable and indeed necessary to assert your needs when someone's behavior infringes on your personal space or values. A phrase I like to use is, "Your rights end where mine begin." This might involve saying to somebody, I need to maintain a respectful dialogue here. Or I feel uncomfortable when my perspective is being invalidated. Another useful strategy is to develop clear and consistent communication about your boundaries. When you feel someone is imposing their authoritarian views, calmly express your feelings and your limits. For example, if a colleague dismisses your ideas with a tone of superiority, you might say, "I understand you feel strongly about this, but I also have valid opinions and a valid perspective that deserves consideration. I'd appreciate it if we could discuss this respectfully. This kind of assertive communication not only protects your mental space, but also models respectful interaction for others. Now, equally important is learning to respect others' boundaries. Often, encounters with fascistic attitudes stem from a lack of mutual respect. And when you take time to listen and acknowledge another person's perspective, even if you disagree, you're contributing to a culture of dialogue rather than domination. Practicing empathy can de-escalate potentially charged interactions. I also want you to remember that respecting another's boundaries doesn't mean that you have to compromise with your own values. It means you're recognizing their humanity just as you want yours to be recognized. Now, if someone refuses to respect your boundaries, I get this question a lot. It is essential to remain calm but assertive. Clearly restate your limits and explain how their actions are impacting your well-being. A lot of times people pull out before they do this, and that's okay if we need to do this, but if you can, use some mindfulness techniques to observe your emotions without reacting impulsively. Sometimes I discuss if you feel the heat come on, wait. And if the behavior persists after you've calmly communicated, consider distancing yourself or seeking support from trusted allies or professionals to maintain your sense of self and emotional safety. If someone's words or actions have compromised your sense of self, something I might recommend is to think of these interactions something like an infection and practice what I like to call emotional quarantining. Emotional quarantining is the practice of limiting your exposure to emotionally toxic influences in order to protect your inner well-being. When you encounter individuals who repeatedly disregard your boundaries, especially as we're discussing those with fascistic or authoritarian tendencies, this strategy becomes vital. It involves recognizing when a relationship or interaction is draining your emotional resources and taking deliberate steps to shield yourself and heal. And this is particularly helpful if you're in a situation where you cannot cut these types of people out of your lives. Instead, this might mean stepping back from conversations when you can that repeatedly trigger conversations of invalidation, or engaging less frequently rather than fostering or playing into harmful dynamics. In essence, this should empower you to maintain your sense of self and emotional stability by prioritizing self-care and mindfully engaging with others. By setting and maintaining healthy interpersonal boundaries, you protect your well-being and reduce the internal stress that comes along with feeling coerced or belittled. You can help create a space where constructive dialogue has a better chance of flourishing, where differences are not feared, but engaged with thoughtfully. In clinical practices, these techniques have helped my clients continue to reduce anxiety and depression by giving them clear frameworks for handling distressing interactions. On a broader level, they even can promote a healthier community dynamic where these types of fascistic impulses are met with resilience and self-empowerment. Remember, when you choose to honor what you're feeling authentically and assert your needs, you're not only safeguarding your well-being, but you're contributing to a culture of respect. I thank you for watching. I thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.